Good morning and welcome to Adaptive Chicago Productions. I am your host, Kenny Borst. Today we are talking about issues with the disabled, advocacy, legislation. These issues are really big because we are required to educate the public. That should be easier to do because according to the Braille Monitor, which is the monthly newsletter of the NFB, that stands for the National Federation of the Blind. According to the January Braille Monitor, 1 out of every 4 people in America has a disability. So it should be quite well known. However, I can't believe that it still isn't. Here to help us with some of these issues is my guest, Denise Avant. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Ken, and thank you for having me this morning.
Today we are going to talk about the National Federation of the Blind in the yearly Washington seminar we have. But first, I want to ask you a couple questions. Can you give us a history lesson on the National Federation of the Blind for those viewing public out there who don't know anything about us?
Okay, so the National Federation of the Blind was formed in November of 1940. So this year will be our 82nd year, and we have our national organization is located in Baltimore, Maryland. Our national president is Mark Riccobono, and we have 52 affiliates, so 50 from every state, and then we have Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia. And within the affiliates, you have at a much local level, you have the chapters. So we're here in Chicago, and we are the Chicago chapter of the National Federation of the Blind of Illinois. And I might add that we are the largest membership and advocacy organization of blind people in the United States and no doubt the world.
Yes, that's what I understood too. I also, isn't it also true that when we started in November of 1940, founded by Dr. Jacobus Tinbrook, isn't it true that we were founded with only 15 members?
I think that number is right. I'm not clear on the exact number. Initially, we had 7 states as members, but like I said, obviously we have grown exponentially over this 82-year span.
I understand that as of today, we have in excess of 50,000 members. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
That's what I thought. And also, could you, for those out there that don't know you, could you give us a history lesson on where you came from and how you found the National Federation of the Blind?
Well, I was born blind, and I grew up and attended the schools at the Chicago Public School. And I went away to college. I majored in political science. I then went to law school, became an assistant public defender. and I worked in the public defender's office for 30 years. I'm now retired. But in about 2005, I decided to go to a meeting of the National Federation of the Blind Chicago chapter. Several of my friends were urging me to attend, and so I did, and little by little, I got involved with the Federation. I was on the Chicago chapter board, then I moved to the state board. Eventually, I became president of the National Federation of the Blind of Illinois. My last year was in 2020. I now serve on our national board, so at the national level. So I think I have done lots of duties in the National Federation of the Blind. I serve on our National Scholarship Committee. I serve on our State Scholarship Committee. I co-chair our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee at the state level. I'm one of the co-chairs of federal legislation for our affiliate. And at one time, before I became president, I served on the advocacy committee. So I've served in various capacities in my 15, well, actually now I guess it's going on 17 years of being active in the Federation.
So you've been very ambitious in the last 17 years.
I guess you could say that. You know, it was interesting. I didn't know that I would ever be as involved as I was. But one thing, a friend of mine put it this way. He said, you know, the National Federation of the Blind, we train our members and then we expect them to go out and do whatever it is that they are trained to do. So if it's advocacy, if it's helping blind children, whatever that is, we give our members the training that is needed. And that's really because at the core of who we are, we believe in the capacity of blind people. You will never hear any member of our organization tell someone that they can't do something because they're blind.
Exactly,
So
and that's very important because
Yes.
that's so much, because I've seen this whenever it's a terrible thing. It's a sad story to see because like there's been a shift. When I went to get my first guide dog, most of the people in the class were, and this was in 1982, so it was almost 40 years ago, most of the people in the class were congenitally blinded. And now if you go to a class at a guide dog school, you will almost always, just about everybody in the class was an adventitiously blinded person. And I was kind of like, you know, by myself as a congenitally blinded person. So, you know, and it's very, and these people have sad stories to tell, like that their families would say, you know, hey, I'm really sorry you lost your sight, you lost your life too, you know, and the thing is, they really believe that, and that's the thing that's in our literature, that our blindness is not what holds us back. It's societal low expectations, and if I,
Well,
yes.
blindness is not the characteristic that defines
Right.
you or your future. And as Federationists every day, we raise the expectations about blind people because we know that low expectations create obstacles between us and our dreams. We know that we can live the life we want.
That's right.
And blindness is not what holds us back. And I think one of the things, you know, when I talk to blind people, I try to bring them in the Federation because I don't want anyone to not pursue a dream, whether it's law school or journalism school or becoming a teacher, because someone has told them that they're blind and they can't do it.
Exactly.
So I think that's one of the things, because so often in society, we are told what we can't do instead of what we can do.
And I've often held the belief that we were told we can't do it, but really it comes right down to that the able-bodied society wants to subjugate us, and so they'll tell us what we can't do because they don't really believe that. They just want us to believe that, because, as we all say, we all know it, knowledge is power. Now, I want to turn us to the Washington seminar. That's what I primarily want to talk about today. And the National Federation of the Blind, we have that every year, don't we?
Yes, that's correct.
And how many years have we had the Washington seminar?
Oh, I don't have the exact number, but I know it's something that goes back to the 70s. And usually we, for many years, have gone out to Washington, D.C. In the early weeks of February and gone up to Capitol Hill and met with our legislators on issues that are of concern to blind Americans. And this year and the previous year, of course, we had to do it a bit differently. We had to meet virtually
Due
because
to
of COVID.
COVID-19,
Yes.
right.
But nevertheless, we did it. We, as the Federation, we banded together and we put our considerable talents together, and we still had our Washington seminar. Our representatives, at least the ones that I talked to in Illinois, they said they missed us not being able to come to the Hill as we had done so many years prior to that. And they expressed that they will be so happy to see us in February of 2023 when we can hopefully get back on the Hill in person.
Yeah, and I was going to say, how many, of course you can't come down to specific numbers exactly, but on average, how many people, how many attendees would you say the National Federation of the Blind has going to Washington every year?
Well, we try to have every state represented, so it's really going to depend. So somebody like, California, well, obviously, they bring a lot of more people than, let's say, Illinois does.
Right,
so they
'cause
might
it's a much
bring
larger state.
20. We bring, 9. You might have South Dakota only bringing 2. So I've never calculated the number,
Right.
but I will say that it definitely depends on the size of every state and its congressional delegation, and so it tracks that. But again, all of the states are represented at Washington seminar.
Okay, and how many politicians would you say are there?
Well, I mean, you've got your House members. There are 100 senators, and there are 435 members of the House.
You would hope that in a perfect world all of them would be there, but I don't think we generally have that luck, do we?
Well, they are in session. They don't all meet with us. So most of the time we meet with staff members of the various offices. Because, of course, usually when we're there, Congress is in session, so the members are on the floor.
So they have to send a staff person or one of their aides.
Yes, but then there are some who really do make it a point to meet in person. So, this past time over Zoom, Congressman Roger Krishnamurthy met with us, and he's done it even when we've come in person. Congressman Snyder, Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky. We have also met with Congressman LaHood, Congressman Davis, and so also Congressman Foster has met with us in person. And they really make every effort, if they can, to meet with us in person and listen to what we have to say.
I really like that because it shows that they are on our side, and that's really good that we could get that much of a turnout. Now, switching channels a little bit, Let's talk about what was the legislative agenda this year for the Washington seminar?
Okay, so we had, first of all, HR 431, which is the House bill number, S212, which is the Senate bill number, the Access Technology Affordability Act. And what that would do is provide a tax credit of up to $2,000 for blind Americans to purchase needed access technology, because access technology like screen readers and braille displays are very expensive, and that's unfortunate because these devices are needed for employment. They're needed for, as we learned in COVID, to complete daily living tasks. And so if you don't have the access technology to work with your computer, it is hard for you to do things independently. Now, we now have 145 co-sponsors, and on the House side.
That's awesome.
Yes, and 15, and this will make you really happy, 15 of those 145 are representatives from the state of Illinois. So we're
That's
hoping
awesome.
that, Congresswoman Bustos and Congresswoman Miller and and also Congressman Kinzinger will also sign off. And the thing about our legislation is that it is bipartisan. So we have Republicans and Democrats on this
That's
particular
awesome.
bill.
I'm happy to hear that.
And in the
Very happy to hear
Senate,
that.
we have Senator Duckworth has co-sponsored S212, which of course is the companion bill.
Yeah, well, I'm really impressed with Senator Duckworth. She's a politician that's on our side because she became disabled in the Iraq War and told us she told us that how often she has to remind people in Washington when they go to have their sessions that she was commenting on how often they would have their sessions in townhouses in Washington that weren't accessible to her. She was extremely candid about that. Mm-hmm. And I was very, very happy to hear that, because it's like, hey, it's about time that we had somebody that was on our side. And it's a shame that those are the circumstances that got her there. But I do believe in her sincerity there when she tells us what she experiences and how much consciousness raising she has to do with other people in Congress.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, she is a great advocate for people with all disabilities. And when we have called her office, she has always been willing to listen to us. So the next part of our legislative agenda is HR 4853, which is the Medical Device Non-Visual Accessibility Act. And this is the original sponsor of this as our very own Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky. And what this is designed to do is to address the inaccessibility of medical devices that are used in the home by most people each and every day, because most of the modern devices have digital displays. So that can be like your blood pressure monitors, your thermometers, your glucometers. All of those have digital displays. So what we're looking to do is to, if passed, have the Food and Drug Administration develop standards whereby these they can build in accessibility so that the device will speak, or there'll be some kind of vibration so that you know how to treat yourself at home as would a sighted person. And so, as I told you, the co-sponsor of this, the sponsor of the legislation is Congresswoman Schakowsky. Now, she has been joined by 4 representatives in Illinois on this bill. Representative Sean Casten, Representative Raja Krishnamurthy, and also Representative Danny Davis, and now Marie Newman. And we have 44 co-sponsors, and we're still building co-sponsorships, because something like that, a bill like this, it's critically important for blind people to be able to care for themselves.
Absolutely.
In their homes. We don't have to live in a nursing home. The technology is available. We see it every day on our iPhones, on our iPads,
Exactly.
and on Android phones where there's speech. So we know the technology is available.
The technology is out
we
there,
just
and
have
that
to
means
get,
we don't have to live in a custodialized environment
Right.
anymore.
So we just have to get the medical, the people that make the medical devices to integrate it into the devices. And so this is something that we are hoping to do. It's very important to us.
Yes, well, Jan Schakowsky has been with us on many different issues with and she's also been a tireless advocate for people with the entire cross-section of the disabled population.
I know we're running out of time, so I just want to point out 2 more pieces of legislation.
Yes.
H.R. 2373, which is the transformation to competitive integrated Employment Act, which and then there's the companion Senate Bill S 3238, and this would phase out Section 14C of the Fair Labor Standards Act, which allows for the payment of subminimum wages to people with disabilities. This is antiquated. It was something that was brought when it was needed in the 1930s. We don't need it anymore.
We don't need it anymore. It's over time to get rid of it.
You were talking about Congresswoman Schakowsky always being a supportive of our congressperson of our concerns, and so she is one of the co-sponsors on this legislation, along with Representative Mike Quigley. And right now, the bill has 41 co-sponsors in the
fantastic.
House. So we are really working very hard to gain more co-sponsors on that one. And then the final one, there is no bill, but it is the 21st Century Website and Applications Accessibility Act. And what that has to do with is having the U.S. Access Board set up guidelines to make the websites and also mobile applications be more accessible so that they work with screen readers, because businesses claim that they don't know what accessibility means. And so consequently, those of us who use screen reading technology will often have problems navigating the internet to do business, to shop, to have things delivered to us, or to use a ride share if we're using an app on our phone. So we think that we can have a set of guidelines by the U.S. Access Board for entities to follow in order that we don't keep running into this problem, because it shouldn't happen. We know that the law says that websites and applications are supposed to be accessible, so we are hopeful that if we give a definition to entities, they will know what it means, and then they could get about the business of making their products accessible to blind people. So these are initiatives that we are working on, will continue to work on until we get them passed.
I was just going to ask you that. Is the goal, is the long-term goal that these pieces of legislation will be passed this year?
Well, obviously, that's something that we are hopeful about. Certainly with the Access Technology Affordability Act, we, with 145 co-sponsors in the House and 37 in the Senate, we are very close in getting that legislation done before, Congress, the 117th Congress is adjourned. The next one is the Medical Device Non-Visual Accessibility Act. We're building co-sponsorships on that one. And so we're hoping that we can get that passed because that's extremely important now with telehealth. So we are definitely working on these things, and we will endeavor to get these measures passed sooner.
If not this year, we will keep on going with it.
We will definitely keep on going.
Yeah, because and even if these pieces of legislation get passed this year, there's going to be something else to replace it.
Oh yes, when people hear about our legislative, initiatives, they get very excited, and many want to be a part of it because they can actually, whether you go to Washington D.C. or not, you can write your representative and you can call their office, and they will respond to your calls. I mean, I used to think growing up as a kid that our representatives would not, listen to us and wouldn't take our calls. The only time they were interested is when we went to vote. But, being in the National Federation of the Blind, being an active member, I see that that's not so, that they really do respond. And many members join. We have a state and national scholarship program for blind college students, and we're in the middle of that now.
Yeah, well, we've made a lot of progress, and,
right.
and I really am glad that we have, because here we do, and that was the reason why I joined, was because my mother was also blind, and I guess this is generational, but she always told my brother, I have a brother that's also blind, and she would tell us blindness discrimination didn't exist, and I was surprised when I found out that it did.
Well, I would urge anybody for more information about our organization, please reach out to our president, Marilyn Green, at president@nfbofillinois.org or 312-343-8396. Or you can go to our website at nfbofillinois.org. You can also find us on Facebook, National Federation of the Blind of Illinois, or you can also find us on Twitter at NFBI. So these are some ways that you can find out more information about the National Federation of the Blind of Illinois and our national organization.
Okay, well, thank you very much for being with us today as our guest, Denise, and to the viewing audience out there, have a good day.
Thank you for this opportunity.